All right, for this explainer, we are digging into a genuine cosmic cold case. We're talking about a mystery full of, well, photographic ghosts, things that showed up in our skies way, way before we ever launched the first satellite. I mean, just think about this for a second. What if we were taking pictures of UFOs before we even had satellites? What if, for decades, we were accidentally capturing something truly strange in our skies? And what if that proof has just been sitting there, hiding in plain sight this whole time? So, here's where it all begins. Right after World War II, between 1949 and 1957, astronomers kicked off this huge project to map the entire northern sky. They were using these massive glass photographic plates. But while they were doing their work, they accidentally captured something really bizarre. We're talking thousands of tiny star-like dots of light that would just pop up in a single photo and then vanish, gone forever. Now, there's a name for these things. Scientists call them transients. And it's super important you get what this means. We're not talking about a smudge on the glass or some kind of camera flaw. No, a transient is a sharp, perfect little point of light, just like a star. The only difference? It's there for one picture, and then it's gone. Like a ghost in the machine.
Okay, Section 1. Cracking a cosmic cold case. For decades, these weird little dots on old photos were just an unsolved curiosity. But then, pretty recently, a team of researchers decided to throw some modern data analysis at the problem. They wanted to crack this cosmic cold case once and for all and figure out what these ghosts from before the satellite age really were.
So the timeline is key here. The investigation kicks off in 1949 with something called the Palomar Sky Survey. And this is the most important part. The whole study period ends in 1957. Why does that matter? Well, that's right before Sputnik, the very first artificial satellite, was launched. So that means whatever these things are, they can't be satellites, they can't be man-made space junk, because there wasn't any. And now, by going back and scanning these old plates with modern tech, scientists have found over 100,000 of these mystery transients. And this really gets to the core of the problem. Like the researchers themselves said, the source of the transients identified remains unknown and cannot be directly tested due to their historical nature. I mean, you can't just point a telescope at the sky and look for it again, right? These things are basically frozen in time on old photographs. So how do you solve a mystery when the crime scene is 70 years old? Well, you start looking for patterns. Section 2, the first clue, a nuclear connection. And that's exactly what they did. The researchers started taking the exact dates these little dots appeared and cross-referencing them with other big historical events happening at the same time. And that's when they found their first, pretty startling clue. Get this, after they crunched all the numbers, they found that a transient was a whopping 45% more likely to show up on one of these photos within just 1 day of an above-ground nuclear weapons test. 45%. That is a huge statistical flag. It's practically screaming that there's a connection. And it gets even more specific. When they really drilled down into the timing, the connection became undeniable. It all peaked on one specific day. Turns out, the odds of seeing one of these transients were a staggering 68% higher on the day after a nuke test. Not the day of, not 2 days after, but exactly 1 day later. That little detail, that 1 day delay, is a super critical piece of this puzzle. Okay, moving on to Section 3, the second clue, a UAP correlation. So the nuclear tests weren't the only thing they checked. The researchers then turned to a totally different and, let's just say a more controversial set of historical records. And that's where they found their second major clue. So what they do? They took all the dates that the transients appeared and compared them to a massive public database of UAP reports, or, what they called UFO sightings back then. And they found another link. Now, it was a smaller link, for sure, but it was statistically significant. That means it wasn't just a random coincidence. The bottom line, on days when more people were looking up and reporting weird things in the sky, the astronomers were capturing more of these transients on their plates. And they even put a number on it. The analysis showed that for every single extra UAP report on any given day, there was an 8.5% jump in the number of transients they found on the plates. Think about that. You've got 2 totally separate sets of data, one from professional astronomers doing their job and another from regular people reporting UFOs, and they're both pointing to the same thing. All right, Section 4, connecting the clues. So, Let's recap. We've got two big clues, right? A really strong link to nuclear tests and a smaller, but still very real, link to UAP reports. So, the next obvious question for the researchers was, what happens when both of these things happen on the same day? And this is where it gets really interesting. It's like an additive effect. So on a normal day, no nuke tests, no UAP reports, you get very few transients. Pretty quiet. Now, add just one of those things, either a test or a bunch of UAP reports, and the number of transients jumps up. But on days where you had both a nuclear test and UAP reports, the number of transients just goes through the roof. It's the highest by a massive margin. It's like the two things were amplifying each other. Okay, section 5. So, what are these transients? We've got these weird, powerful connections, but what does it all mean? What in the world could these ghost-like dots from the 1950s actually be? Let's walk through the possible explanations. So the researchers went through and ruled out all the easy answers. Was it just a defect on the photographic plate? Nope. These are sharp, perfect points of light, not some random smudge. Could it be nuclear fallout fogging up the film? No way. Fallout creates this kind of hazy fog, not a single distinct point. Well, what about debris from a bomb itself getting shot way up into the sky? That one-day delay we talked about makes that pretty unlikely. So, what does that leave? The paper basically puts two big theories on the table. One, some totally unknown atmospheric effect that gets triggered by a nuke. Or two, actual artificial objects in orbit reflecting sunlight. And maybe, just maybe, they were drawn to the nuclear tests. But that first theory, the unknown atmospheric effect, has a huge problem. Just think about it for a sec. These photos were 50-minute-long exposures. Because the Earth is spinning, anything that's in our atmosphere should create a streak across the plate. But that's not what they found. What they found were perfect, single, stationary points of light. Like a star that wasn't supposed to be there. So, when you roll out all the boring, mundane explanations, and even the more scientific-sounding theories don't quite fit the evidence, you're left with something else. You're left with a much more extraordinary and, yeah, okay, speculative possibility that the research paper itself brings up. And that leaves us with a really profound question, doesn't it? The data shows this undeniable link between the dawn of the atomic age, public UFO sightings, and these ghost-like images on scientific plates. Were they all connected? Did humanity's first, most powerful acts of self-destruction attract attention from something or someone else? That is the cosmic cold case that, thanks to this new research, is officially wide open.